Welcome to China Connect. Today we're at the Beijing Raffles Hotel talking with Helen Wang, author of the book The Chinese Dream, The Rise of the World's Largest Middle Class. I'm AmCham China's Matt Whistler. One of the compelling statistics you hear when talking about the growth of middle-class purchasing power is that China's consumer market is expected to reach 16 trillion US dollars by 2020. In her presentation to AmCham China members and guests here today, Helen Wang discussed the market, outlining the growth opportunities for American businesses in China. Helen Wang was originally from China and has spent about the last 20 years working in the U.S. after graduating with a master's degree from Stanford University. She's worked with think tanks, consulted with Fortune 500 companies, and was an entrepreneur working with startups in Silicon Valley. She currently writes a column that appears on Forbes.com. Helen Wang, welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Okay. So, having grown up in Hangzhou and lived in the U.S. for about the last 20 years, I guess you've got a pretty good or interesting perspective on both countries and how China is developing now as a business opportunity for American companies. What would be some of the key opportunities as China's middle class grows for U.S. companies to get into the market?
Okay. Oh, certainly consumer market, right? And I think some U.S. companies are already doing very well, and especially in auto industry and a lot of consumer market like Nike.
Right.
Yeah,
PNG.
yeah. Those areas definitely there's huge potentials. And I also think the healthcare industry is a big area, and education is another big area. I know many U.S. Universities start to setting up a campus here because again that had huge needs, and so that's area. And one more area is really clean tech field. Yeah, I think American companies are already doing a lot, and the government are already doing a lot.
Now, as part of writing this book, which you've spent more than a year on, I guess?
I spent 3 years.
That's right, 3 years.
3 years working on this, yeah.
You talk with a lot of people. What are some of the interviews or people that you talk to that sort of stand out in your mind that helped you to draw some of the conclusions that are most important to the book?
I think when several entrepreneurs, they really sort of inspired me. And when he's a rural migrant, he's from very, very poor family in the remote village, but how he, just because his determination want to escape the poverty, and how he worked his way up from factory to a restaurant and become entrepreneur himself, and brought his whole family from village to the city.
What was his product? What was he making?
The product he was making, he was trading cell phones.
Okay.
Yeah, he was trading cell phones. Yeah, his story is quite inspiring, and because I met him, I can see this optimism and the determination, and he told me, I'm glad I was born poor. Because of that made me work very hard, and I would never stop until I achieve my goals. And then, so that's that. And then he also has higher goals, and he realized, he want to devote his life to education, and partly because he didn't have a good education as a child himself. Unlike some other his peers, to continue chasing money. Well, nothing wrong, right? It's all good. Capitalism. I think he wanted to find some purpose in his life. He said, making money is easy, but being an educator is something else.
Okay.
So basically he sold his business, started to invest some money in the English language school, and start to run a branch of the school. And he said when he gets older, he wants to go back to the village to teach rural kids.
And I guess we're seeing more and more of those kinds of entrepreneurs that are also kind of connected to society in some way. Maybe you don't hear about them very often, but you've met them.
Yeah, I met some of them. It's quite interesting. And so in terms of how the people interview help me crystallize my thinking, I think it's really about my experience in the U.S. and of course my experience growing up here. So I sort of understand the culture here intrinsically, and then also understand American perspective. Then I see a lot of differences between us. When you look at this way, they actually can be complementary rather than contradictory.
Right.
Yeah.
And you worked in Silicon Valley for a while,
Yeah.
isn't that right?
Yeah, yeah.
And one of the questions that sometimes comes up is China's entrepreneurship or spirit of inventiveness. Where would you, based on the people that you've met, how do you see that inventiveness and that innovation coming into China now?
Well, that part I still don't see much yet. And as I said, part of it is because this education, the whole culture really doesn't encourage creativity or independent thinking. And so I think that's a huge problem for China.
That's one of the big questions, can China innovate?
Yeah, and so far I know Fast Company has special project just tracking where the next innovation will come from China. But in my research and in my interview people, I haven't seen any of that yet. But I know one entrepreneur, Jack Ma, and he's quite a caricature. I think really China needed this kind of people.
He's a role model.
Yeah, he is already a role model, but I think the fact that he's a role model is unconventional according to, in general, Chinese,
Maybe you should explain to people who don't know who Jackie Ma is.
Okay.
About Alibaba and Taobao.
Okay. Yeah, Jack Ma is the founder and CEO of Alibaba Group. And now the company Alibaba is already IPO'd on Hong Kong Stock Exchange, and also.
And it's an internet platform where it brings buyers and sellers together.
E-commerce platform helps small and medium enterprises doing business online. And one of the big story of Alibaba is Taobao defeated eBay. When eBay had all the chances to succeed.
All the investment money,
all the money, technology, management, they are far superior than Alibaba at that time. Was a small company, was struggling, barely made any profit. But eBay failed because they didn't try to understand China market and didn't adapt their business to Chinese market rather than say, okay, this is what we do, this is our brand. So that is a very classic story. And I think Jack Ma did different is he asked his team to stand upside down. Even Jack Ma's team didn't believe at the time. They think, how could possible we compete with eBay? Then Jack Ma said, okay, everybody stand upside down. So people said, no, we can't do this. I never done this. I'm too old for this. But Jack Ma said, hey, I'm the oldest among this group, and everybody must stand upside down on their heads, right? Like a yoga pose. So one by one, he made everyone stand against the wall. Then he said, look, see, when you stand upside down, you look at the world from very different angle. He said eBay may be well known in the US, but in China, you ask 100 people, less than 10% of people have heard of eBay, but 90% of people know about Alibaba. That kind of characteristic is a go against conventional wisdom.
Want to put in a plug for your hometown, because I think you and Jackie Ma are both from Hangzhou?
Yes, yeah. Part of the reason I know that is at that time I was developing technology solution for underserved community at Stanford University. So we tried to work with Alibaba, eBay at that time to help those small entrepreneur access online market. And then, of course, Hangzhou is my hometown, and at that time, I visited Alibaba's headquarters in Hangzhou.
What an interesting time to intersect with him as he was sort of on the way up.
Yeah. And I was fascinated because at that time, 2004, I visited Alibaba's headquarters, and I actually asked one of the senior managers, said, are you afraid so that eBay will, buy you out? And what he said to me is, no, we will buy eBay. And 2004, eBay just came in. And so I was so fascinated, so I kept the blog to just following how these two companies compete. And within 2 years, eBay was completely defeated.
Right. I wanted to ask you about the nonprofits that you help and bringing technology solutions to underserved communities. Tell us about your involvement.
So that was a project I developed as a fellow at Stanford University. I think in 2004, I went back to Stanford University as a fellow. We were looking at some social problems to see whether we can use technology to solve those problems. For example, we realized that there's a digital gap, right? And many people, especially in developing countries and in rural areas, they couldn't access the internet. So that definitely created obstacle for them to move up in life. So our work is really using mobile phones, because we notice people in the village, they don't have internet, but they do all have mobile phones. How we can leverage that infrastructure to help these people at that time we were thinking to help them post their product information online so people can reach, so help them generate some incomes so they can send their kids to school, and so that was the project we did. Yeah.
Now, in your book, you'd also talked about sort of, you're kind of at the crossroads between East and West, based on your background and where you are today. And this philosophy is sort of the oneness of the world.
Okay.
Maybe explain that to us. How does that fit in with the emerging middle class, and what does that mean to you?
Yeah, I see emerging Chinese middle class is one of the catalysts for us to realize this global oneness, because Chinese middle class definitely create a balancing force economically. As I explained, in traditional Chinese economy is very much focused on the saving. Economy was driven by investments and exports. But on the other hand, I see U.S., people overspend. So there's oversaving, there's overspend. So there's when Chinese middle class start to learn how to spend, then they help balance Chinese economy. In the meantime, help U.S. economy also rebalance towards more.
So that's where it can all sort of come together and help both sides.
Yeah, both sides. And this oneness also explore in the cultural area, how Chinese culture very much value collective interests. And then in the West, we are so individualistic. But then you see these two need to be balanced. Chinese younger people are becoming more individualistic, and then Western also can learn.
Confucius meets J.P. Morgan.
Yeah, so it basically when we learn from both, we both benefit. So I see this. I define the oneness as a diversities among different parties, how they seemingly very contradictory to each other, but in reality they balance and complete each other.
And there's a place for us to all to come together.
Yeah, that's exactly my point.
Great. So final question. A lot has been said and written about China's search for meaning or search for spirituality.
Yeah.
And some people point to the increasing numbers of people that are finding religion and sort of joining up with one religion or another. And then others point to, sometimes they talk about the consumer culture and luxury brands and things like that as a way of finding, you said chasing money, or people sort of finding meaning through that. Based on the people that you've talked to and the thinking that you've brought to it, how do you see that developing in the middle class, the search for meaning?
Oh, I think that's a huge thing in Chinese middle class. They start to realize, money cannot bring me happiness, and they are looking all over the place. I think there is a spiritual vault in Chinese society, because certainly communism doesn't work anymore. Nobody believes in communism, but then they don't have Chinese traditional culture. Like Confucianism was also destroyed many times during Chinese history. Confucianism may not really apply to modern life, and so they are just searching very intensely.
And when you meet people and talk to them, when you've interviewed them, how do they talk about that?
Several people say that people are searching because they just want to find the higher purpose, connection. Some people become a Christian, and you say, no, I don't want to become Christian anymore. So there are all this search. Yeah, and in terms part of its main reason, I think, is really this moral decay in Chinese society, because now money is king now. There's no religion, but people know they want to find some center of their life. And another thing is, it's very interesting, because traditionally, family is supposed to be the purpose of life. One young woman told me, is that, in China, we don't have a religion, but family is the purpose of life. But now some family is also breaking apart. Many married men, businessmen have affairs and mistress, and so this particular young woman, she said, she doesn't want to get married because she doesn't have faith in relationship, but she wants to adopt a child because that gave her a purpose in life. Yes, it's quite a dramatic change.
I guess we'll have to keep watching.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, it's interesting.
Well, thanks for your time. We appreciate you sharing your thoughts from your book and your experiences out in China.
Thank you for having me.